short presentation that I made, and I wanted to record for you guys to listen to that as a very famous classic paper by Waerhaug in 1979, and it contains a very interesting concept, which will be very helpful for you to understand the pathophysiology of periodontal disease. I titled The Distance Between the Bacteria and the Crest of the Bone. However, it's not a title that Waerhaug put for his papers. So there are two papers in 1979, and as you see, both of them talks about the angular bony defect and the trauma from occlusion. So infrabony pockets, and you see the angular bony defect, and it kind of wants to relate it to trauma from occlusion, because there has been always this mystery of the angular bony defect, and for a long time and still now, a lot of people, they think it relates to occlusal trauma. So there is a classic paper which is 1965 by Glickman, and in this paper, the gingival inflammation and trauma from occlusion together, called as combined co-destructive effect. It means that there's a school of thought that people they believe that angular bony defect occurs when you have inflammation in the gingiva, and also some traumatic occlusal forces. But Waerhaug in 1979, based on a histology and occlusal analysis, he couldn't find a correlation. However, he found a correlation between the downgrowth of the plaque and the angular bony defect. So in his histological study, which are the two papers, radiographic and histology, he realized that there's no correlation if you have occlusal trauma or not, but if there is a specific distance between the bacteria of plaque and attachment apparatus, and also the crest of the bone. So in the one of the papers, which is 64 sets of human teeth and histology, he found that alveolar crest was not found closer than 1 millimeter to the junctional epithelium. It means if you have bacteria, there's inflammation, and inflammation, in the process of inflammation, you have destruction of the attachment apparatus. So junctional epithelium keeps this distance and moves more apical. The downgrowth of plaque in the histological evidence, he found that there is inflammation when you have plaque. So he found almost in all the specimens there are inflammatory cells. And there was about 0.2 to 1.8 millimeter distance between the plaque front and attached fibers, which is the same thing. There is inflammation, there is destruction of the tissue, and the collagen fibers, they are not that in histological specimen. If you look at the inflamed connective tissue, you will not gonna find all of those nice structure of the collagens. The downgrowth of plaque, the other thing that he realized is that there is always bone loss. There is some distance between the plaque and the crest of the bone. It means that they don't exist at the same spot. So plaque doesn't touch the bone. So you have plaque close to the bone resorption is going to happen because it's in a process of inflammation. So he found this 0.5 to 2.7 millimeter between the plaque and the crest of the bone. In the other paper that I put two screenshots of these two old papers, title in the slide. The other one is 48 extracted teeth, and you see that he put this very old table, and he put it as a range and also the average. So from the plaque to attach fibers, in average he found 0.5 millimeters. So there is a zone of inflammation, and because that inflammation happens, body will kind of retract all this attachment apparatus more apical, so there is no direct invasion of the bacteria. And the other measurements that he had was plaque to bone, which he measured it in the radiograph. It is a radiograph and histology study. He found 1 to 3 millimeter and in average 1.8. So if you have bacteria, your crest of the bone is usually 1.8 millimeter away from that. So if the bacterial plaque migrate down, it goes down from the surface of the tooth, it will be this distance. It's sort of like protection that body doesn't let the bacteria to invade the bone. So this is not from his study. It's just a random X-ray that I put here. So you see the calculus on the radiograph, because we can't see plaque on a radiograph, so we use usually calculus, as it is a contributing factor, but it is a retentive factor for plaque. So this is why it's a landmark that we measure the plaque by that calculus. But the plaque should be more, most probably on the surface of the calculus or around it. So you see here, he realized that it's 0.2 to 1.8 millimeter of this distance from the bone to the plaque. So and the other thing is that in 3D model, if you look at it in 3 dimension, then you would have a radius of 0.2 to 1.8 millimeter. It means if I have calculus in this spot around the tooth, the distance in all direction will be around 0.2 to 1.8 millimeter. What it says is that if you have, let's say, calculus or plaque here, there will be bone loss in the radius 3D around this calculus. If you have a thick bone, so the distance is more than 1.8, let's say, then there's no destruction at that side, because that's the radius of inflammation and bone loss. This is why in thicker bone you may get like 3-wall defect or you have like intra-bony defect. So I want to end this short lecture or recording with these 2 questions, and I want you to answer these on blue line, which I will post a question there. I want you to describe your understanding in a very short paragraph. Even you're a good writer, just in 1 sentence. If you can explain this, do you think there is a correlation between the measurements of supracrestal attached tissue, or the older term of biological width, and Waerhaug's findings? Because we don't exactly correlate them, and we talk about supracrestal attached tissue, which is like this is how nature is going to respond. This is what the distance between the CEJ and the crest of the bone is, and this is how, like, there's no clear connection that we have and say, oh, the back plaque is the reason that you have the measurements of biological width. So I want you to think and try to connect these 2, and do you think there is a correlation between these 2? And the other question is that, do you think there is any correlation between the subgingival crown margin or restoration and bone loss and Waerhaug's findings? So I want you to think about what Waerhaug talked about in those studies, and what is your understanding of supracrestal attached tissue, or the margin of the crown, how close it can be to the supracrestal attached tissue. You don't need to describe it in a way like many sentences, just what you think and how would you connect these 2 concepts.